In the glittering world of Manhattan's elite, where love is a currency and secrets are the deadliest of assets, a billionaire's pregnant wife is brutally cast out onto the street from their lavish penthouse. Left with nothing but the clothes on her back and a heart shattered into a million pieces, her life takes an unimaginable turn. As she weeps on the cold pavement, a mysterious force begins to move mountains for her. This isn't just a story of revenge. It's a tale of an astonishing secret, a hidden benefactor with a shocking agenda, and the ultimate power play that saw an entire New York City skyscraper bought just for her. The penthouse at 157, the glittering needle piercing the Manhattan skyline, was more than a home. It was a kingdom. For Anna, it was a gilded cage, albeit one with breathtaking floor-to-ceiling views of Central Park. From this vantage point, the city seemed a toy, a miniature world she could hold in the palm of her hand. But her own world felt just as controlled, just as subject to the whims of its creator. Her husband, the formidable and devastatingly handsome Julian Croft. Julian wasn't just wealthy. He was a titan of industry, a man whose name was whispered with a mixture of awe and fear in the boardrooms of Wall Street. He had built his empire from the ground up, a fact he never let anyone, especially Anna, forget. Theirs was a whirlwind romance, a story the tabloids had devoured with insatiable hunger. A young, unknown artist swept off her feet by the city's most eligible bachelor. The wedding was a spectacle, a symphony of extravagance held at the iconic Plaza Hotel with a guest list that read like a who's who of global power. For 5 years, Anna had played her part to perfection. The demure, elegant wife, a stunning accessory on Julian's arm at countless galas and charity events. She had traded her paintbrushes and canvases for couture gowns and diamond necklaces. She had learned to navigate the treacherous waters of New York high society, a world where smiles were weapons and friendships were transactional. She had even convinced herself she was happy, that the intoxicating rush of their lifestyle was a worthy substitute for the quiet passion of her art. The first cracks in the flawless facade of their marriage had appeared subtly. A dismissive wave of his hand when she mentioned wanting to set up a small studio in a spare room. A condescending smile when she offered an opinion on his latest business venture. Julian had not married a partner. He had acquired a beautiful possession, one he expected to remain pristine and silent on its pedestal. But everything changed the day Anna discovered she was pregnant. A tiny, fluttering heartbeat on a grainy ultrasound screen had ignited a spark of hope in her that she hadn't realized was dormant. This child, their child, would be the bridge that finally connected their two disparate worlds. It would be the one thing that was truly theirs, not just another of Julian's acquisitions. She planned the reveal meticulously, a private dinner in the penthouse, the city lights twinkling below like a sea of scattered diamonds. She wore a simple, elegant white dress, a stark contrast to the vibrant, abstract painting she had secretly been working on for weeks apiece. She planned to give him as a gift along with the news. Julian arrived late, as he often did, his face a mask of weary indifference. He loosened his tie, his eyes already on his tablet, scrolling through market reports. Long day, he grunted, barely glancing at the exquisitely set table. Anna's carefully constructed confidence began to waver. "I have something to tell you, Julian," she said, her voice a little too bright. "Can it wait, Anna? I have a conference call with Tokyo in an hour." "No," she insisted, her hand instinctively going to her still flat stomach. "It can't wait." She took a deep breath and told him. The words tumbled out, full of hope and nervous excitement. She spoke of their future, of a family, of a love that would finally be more than just a performance. When she finished, the silence was deafening, broken only by the distant hum of the city. Julian's expression was unreadable. He slowly placed his tablet on the table, his gaze cold and analytical. "You're pregnant," he stated, the words flat and devoid of emotion. "Yes," she whispered, a smile finally breaking through her anxiety. "Isn't it wonderful?" He stared at her for a long moment, his eyes narrowing. Then he did something that chilled her to the bone. He laughed. It wasn't a laugh of joy or surprise, but a short, sharp bark of derision. Wonderful, he sneered, the word dripping with contempt. You think this is wonderful? Anna's smile faltered. What do you mean? I mean, he said, rising from his chair and pacing the room like a caged panther, that this is a disaster. A complication I neither need nor want. The blood drained from Anna's face. A complication? Julian, this is our child. It's a liability, he shot back, his voice rising. My life is perfectly calibrated, Anna. My business, my public image, my personal life, everything is exactly as it should be. A child throws a wrench in all of that. The noise, the mess, the demands on my time. It's an inconvenience. Tears pricked at Anna's eyes. An inconvenience? That's all this is to you. What did you expect, he scoffed. That I would suddenly transform into a doting father? That we would become some sort of idyllic, happy family? That was never part of the arrangement, Anna. You were supposed to be the beautiful, uncomplicated part of my life. Not this. He gestured vaguely at her midsection, his disgust palpable. The cruelty of his words was like a physical blow. The gilded cage she had lived in for 5 years suddenly felt suffocating, its golden bars turning to cold, hard steel. The arrangement, she echoed, her voice trembling with a mixture of hurt and fury. I thought this was a marriage. It's a partnership, he corrected her, his tone sharp and clinical. And you have just violated the terms of our agreement. By getting pregnant, she cried, her composure finally shattering. How could you be so heartless? Heartless, he repeated, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. I'm a pragmatist, Anna, and pragmatically, this is a problem that needs to be solved. He walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows, his back to her, as he surveyed his kingdom below. I've already spoken to my lawyer. He'll draw up the papers. Anna's heart stopped. What papers? He turned to face her, his expression as cold and unforgiving as the winter sky. Our divorce, of course, and a non-disclosure agreement. You will be well compensated for your time, naturally. A generous settlement, enough to ensure your silence and your discretion. The room began to spin. You're divorcing me because I'm pregnant? I'm terminating a contract that has been breached, he said, his voice devoid of any warmth. As for the issue, he hesitated, his gaze flickering once more to her stomach. You will take care of it. Discreetly. The implication hit her with the force of a tidal wave. Take care of it, she whispered, the words catching in her throat. You want me to get rid of our baby? It's not a baby, Anna, he said, his voice dangerously low. It's a fetus, a collection of cells that threatens to derail my life. You will terminate the pregnancy. It's the only logical solution. Anna stared at him, at this man she had once thought she loved, and saw a stranger, a monster cloaked in a bespoke suit. The love she had harbored for him, the hope she had held on to so desperately, withered and died in that instant, replaced by a cold, hard nod of revulsion. No, she said, her voice shaking but firm. I won't. Julian's eyes flashed with anger. Don't be a fool, Anna. You have no idea what you're up against. I don't care, she said, a newfound strength surging through her veins. I will not murder my child for your convenience. For a moment, she thought he might strike her. He took a step towards her, his face contorted in a mask of rage, but then he seemed to collect himself, a chillingly calm expression settling over his features. Very well, he said, his voice deceptively soft. You've made your choice. Now you can live with the consequences. He walked to the grand, marble-clad entrance of the penthouse and gestured to the 2 imposing security guards who were always stationed there. Pack a bag for Mrs. Croft, he commanded, his voice ringing with absolute authority. 1 bag. She's leaving. The guards, men who had always treated her with deference and respect, now looked at her with a mixture of pity and professional detachment. One of them, a burly man named Frank, moved towards their bedroom. Anna was in a state of shock, her mind struggling to process the rapid-fire succession of events. Julian, you can't do this, she pleaded, her voice cracking. This is my home. It was never your home, Anna, he said, his voice as sharp as glass. It's my property, and you are no longer welcome here. He pulled out his phone and began to type, his attention already elsewhere. "You have 5 minutes." Frank returned with a single small suitcase, one she had used for a weekend trip years ago. He had thrown in a random assortment of her belongings, a few dresses, a pair of shoes, some toiletries. It was a pathetic collection, a stark representation of how little she truly owned in this life of extravagant illusion. "Julian, please," she begged, tears streaming down her face. "Don't do this. Think about our baby." He didn't even look up from his phone. "The baby is your problem now," he said coldly. "You chose it over me, over this life." He finally raised his eyes, his gaze sweeping over her with a look of utter disdain. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer." The security guards flanked her, their presence a silent, immovable force. They escorted her to the private elevator, the doors closing with a soft, final hiss, sealing her off from the life she had known. As the elevator descended the 90 floors, Anna stared at her reflection in the polished bronze walls, a woman in a beautiful white dress, her face streaked with tears, clutching a small suitcase. A queen banished from her castle. The elevator doors opened into the opulent lobby, the air thick with the scent of expensive perfume and fresh flowers. The doorman, a man who had greeted her with a warm smile every day for 5 years, now averted his gaze, his face a mask of professional neutrality. He held the door open for her, and she stepped out into the harsh, unforgiving glare of the New York City night. The cold air hit her like a slap in the face, a stark contrast to the climate-controlled perfection of the penthouse. The sounds of the city, which had always seemed so distant and muted from her perch on the 90th floor, were now a deafening cacophony of blaring horns, shouting voices, and wailing sirens. She stood on the pavement outside 157, the monumental skyscraper looming over her like a silent, indifferent giant. She was homeless, pregnant, and alone, with nothing to her name but a suitcase full of clothes and a heart full of shattered dreams. The tears came then, hot and unrestrained, a torrent of grief and despair. She sank to her knees on the cold, unforgiving concrete, her body shaking with sobs, oblivious to the curious glances of passers-by. She had been kicked out of the penthouse. But as she wept in the shadow of the tower, a plan was already in motion, set in place by a secret benefactor who had been watching, waiting for this very moment. A benefactor who was about to buy her the entire tower. The first few hours were a blur of disorientation and raw, unadulterated pain. Anna wandered the streets of Manhattan like a ghost. Her designer, heel-so accustomed to plush carpets and chauffeured cars now, clicking awkwardly on the grimy pavement. The city that had once been her playground had transformed into a labyrinth of indifferent faces and towering buildings that seemed to mock her fallen state. She eventually found herself in a small, dingy hotel in a less fashionable part of town, the kind of place she hadn't set foot in since she was a struggling artist with more dreams than dollars. The room was cramped and smelled of stale cigarette, smoke, and desperation. The threadbare carpet was a world away from the hand-knotted silk rugs of the penthouse. As she sat on the edge of the lumpy mattress, the full weight of her situation crashed down on her. She had no one. Her family, a modest middle-class couple from Ohio, had been so intimidated by Julian's wealth and power that their relationship with Anna had become strained and distant. They had seen her marriage as a fairy tale, a life beyond their wildest imaginations. How could she possibly tell them that the prince was a monster and the castle had crumbled? Her friends, the glamorous, air-kissing women of her social circle, were Julian's friends first and foremost. Their loyalty, she knew, was tied to his influence and his bank account. To them, she was now a liability, a social pariah, a cautionary tale to be whispered about over champagne and canapes. The next morning, the news broke. It wasn't in the gossip columns of the tabloids. Not yet. Julian was too meticulous for that. Instead, it was a carefully worded statement from his company's PR department, released to the financial press. Julian Croft and Anna Croft have amicably decided to separate, it read. They asked for privacy during this difficult time. Amicably, Anna scoffed, the word tasting like ash in her mouth. There was nothing amicable about being thrown out onto the street in the middle of the night. Her phone, which had been ominously silent since she left the penthouse, suddenly buzzed with a notification. It was a wire transfer. A substantial sum, enough to live comfortably for a few years, had been deposited into her personal account. It was the generous settlement Julian had spoken of. Hush money. A final, insulting transaction to close the books on their marriage. Attached to the notification was a crisp, impersonal email from a law firm she didn't recognize. It contained a single attachment, a PDF of the divorce papers and the non-disclosure agreement. The terms were brutal. She was to relinquish all claims to their marital assets, to never speak publicly or privately about their marriage or the reasons for its dissolution, and most chillingly, to resolve the issue of the pregnancy in a timely and confidential manner. A wave of nausea, sharper than her morning sickness, washed over her. He was actually trying to legally obligate her to have an abortion. The audacity, the sheer, unadulterated arrogance of it was breathtaking. A fire ignited within her, a flicker of the defiance that had made her refuse his demand in the first place. She would not be bought. She would not be silenced. And she would most certainly not harm her child. She deleted the email without a second thought, the act of small but significant rebellion. Meanwhile, back in the rarefied air of the 90th floor, Julian was orchestrating his own narrative. He convened an emergency meeting with his inner circle, his shark-like lawyer, Arthur Vance, his ruthlessly efficient head of PR, a woman named Diana who could spin straw into gold, and his younger brother, Marcus, a man who lived in Julian's shadow, his life a testament to wasted potential and hedonistic pursuits. "She's out," Julian announced, his voice clipped and devoid of emotion. "The settlement has been sent. The papers are with her. It's done." Arthur Vance, a man whose face seemed permanently etched in a disapproving scowl, steepled his fingers. "Any other matter? The pregnancy?" "She's refusing," Julian admitted, a flicker of annoyance crossing his features. "She's being sentimental. Emotional." "Emotional is dangerous," Diana interjected, her sharp eyes scanning her tablet. "It's unpredictable. What's our angle?" "We stick to the amicable separation story," Julian instructed. "We leak a few carefully selected tidbits to our contacts at the Post. Irreconcilable differences. They grew apart. The pressures of my work. The usual cliches. We paint her as a tragic figure, not a victim. Someone who simply couldn't handle the demands of my world." Marcus, who had been lounging on a plush sofa, swirling a glass of amber liquid, let out a low whistle. "Cold, bro. Even for you. Threw her out because she's pregnant? That's a new low." Julian's gaze snapped to his brother, his eyes like chips of ice. "Stay out of this, Marcus. You have no idea what's at stake." "I know you're a bastard," Marcus retorted, taking a defiant sip of his drink. "She was a good woman, Julian. The only decent person you've had in your life in years." "She was a distraction," Julian shot back, his voice rising. "A beautiful, expensive distraction, and now she's a complication that I am handling." "So what's the real reason?" Marcus pressed, a rare spark of seriousness in his eyes. "It's not just about the inconvenience of a baby. I know you, Julian. This is about something else." Julian's jaw tightened. He wouldn't admit the real reason, not even to his own brother. The truth was far more complex, buried deep beneath layers of ambition and fear. It was about a legacy, a dynasty he was trying to build, and a past he was desperate to keep buried. A child, his child, was a threat to all of it, a wild card, a potential heir who could one day unravel everything he had so carefully constructed. "The reason," Julian said, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper, "is my business. And you would do well to remember that." The thinly veiled threat hung in the air, a stark reminder of the power Julian wielded over everyone in his orbit, including his own family. While Julian was busy spinning his web of lies, Anna was taking the first tentative steps towards reclaiming her life. She found a small furnished apartment in a quiet, unassuming neighborhood, a place where no one would know her name or her history. She used a fraction of Julian's settlement to pay the rent, the act filling her with a bitter sense of irony. She was using his money to build a life he had tried to destroy. She also made an appointment with a lawyer, not a high-powered celebrity attorney, but a woman named Helen who ran a small, independent practice focused on women's rights. Helen was the antithesis of Arthur Vance. She was warm, empathetic, and radiated a quiet strength that Anna found instantly reassuring. Anna told her everything. The gilded cage, the emotional abuse, the cruel ultimatum, the shocking expulsion from her home. Helen listened patiently, her expression growing more and more grim with each detail. "What he has done," Helen said, her voice laced with outrage, "is not just morally reprehensible, it's illegal. He cannot coerce you into terminating a pregnancy, and a non-disclosure agreement signed under such duress is highly contestable." For the first time in days, a sliver of hope pierced through Anna's despair. "So I can fight him?" "We can certainly try," Helen said, her tone cautious. "But you need to understand, Anna, Julian Croft is one of the most powerful men in this city. He will use every resource at his disposal to crush you. He will try to paint you as an unstable, gold-digging opportunist. He will drag your name through the mud. It will be a brutal, public battle." Anna's heart sank. A public battle was the last thing she wanted. All she wanted was to be left alone to raise her child in peace. "What if I don't want to fight him?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "What if I just want him to leave me alone?" Helen gave her a sad, knowing smile. "Men like Julian Croft don't just leave people alone, Anna. They control them. The only way to be free of him is to have your own power." The words echoed in Anna's mind. Power. It was something she had never had, something she had never even thought to want. She had been content to live in the shadow of Julian's power, never realizing that the shadow was a cage. As she left Helen's office, a sense of weary resignation settled over her. The fight seemed too daunting, the odds too insurmountable. She walked through the unfamiliar streets of her new neighborhood, her hand resting on her belly, a silent promise to the life growing inside her. She would protect this child, even if it meant living a life in the shadows, constantly looking over her shoulder. That evening, as she was unpacking the few belongings she had, her phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hesitantly, she answered. "Anna Croft?" a man's voice asked. It was a voice she didn't recognize, smooth and professional, with an undercurrent of something she couldn't quite place. "Yes," she answered cautiously. "Who is this?" "My name is Benjamin Carter," the man said. "I'm a representative for a private benefactor who has taken an interest in your situation." Anna's blood ran cold. Was this another of Julian's tricks? Another lawyer? Another threat? "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice sharp with suspicion. "Please, Mrs. Croft," the man said, his tone calm and reassuring. "This is not what you think. My client is an admirer of yours, a supporter, and they are aware of the injustice that has been done to you." Anna was speechless. An admirer? A supporter? It made no sense. "My client," Benjamin Carter continued, his voice dropping slightly, "has instructed me to make you an offer of assistance, a way to secure your future and the future of your child, in a way that will ensure you are never at the mercy of a man like Julian Croft again." Anna's mind raced, trying to process the bizarre turn of events. "What kind of offer?" "My client is a person of considerable means," Carter explained, "and they believe in righting wrongs. They have been following your husband's career for some time, and they are displeased with his methods. They see in you an opportunity to restore a certain balance." "I don't understand," Anna said, her confusion mounting. "What do you want from me?" "We want nothing from you, Mrs. Croft," Carter said smoothly. "We want to give you something. A weapon, a shield, a home." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "My client is in the process of acquiring the entire 157 tower, and they would like to gift you the penthouse your former home along with a controlling interest in the building's ownership." Anna dropped the phone. It clattered to the floor, the man's voice still faintly audible. She stared at the cracked screen, her heart pounding in her chest. It was impossible. A prank, a cruel, elaborate hoax designed to break her spirit completely. But as she stood there in her small, anonymous apartment, a tiny, insane flicker of hope ignited within her. What if it wasn't a hoax? What if there was someone out there, a secret benefactor, a guardian angel with an appetite for vengeance and a flair for the dramatic? The idea was so outlandish, so utterly unbelievable, that it was almost perfect. A twist of fate so audacious that not even Julian Croft, in all his calculating arrogance, could have ever seen it coming. The battle for her future, she realized, had just begun, and a mysterious, powerful new player had just entered the game. The days that followed the mysterious phone call from Benjamin Carter were a strange mix of hope and disbelief. Anna half expected to wake up and find it was all a dream, a figment of her overwrought imagination. But then a sleek black car would appear at her doorstep, a courier would deliver a discreet package, or a quiet, unassuming email would land in her inbox. The secret benefactor, whoever they were, was very real, and their influence was both subtle and profound. The first tangible proof came in the form of a new, secure phone, delivered by a tight-lipped courier. It came with a single, pre-programmed number, Benjamin Carter's. He became her sole point of contact with this invisible force, a calm, reassuring voice in the whirlwind of her life. "My client believes in discretion and security," Carter explained during their first call on the new device. "Julian Croft is a man who deals in information. We must ensure he has none about our activities." Carter also arranged for Anna to move. The small apartment, while a refuge, was not secure. The benefactor had acquired a spacious, elegant brownstone in a historic, tree-lined neighborhood in Brooklyn, a world away from the cold, modern glass of Midtown Manhattan. The property was registered to a shell corporation, making it untraceable to Julian. "Consider it your safe house," Carter told her. "A place to rest, to plan, and to prepare." Prepare for what? Anna wondered. The benefactor's plans remained shrouded in mystery. All Carter would say was that his client had a long-term strategy to address the imbalance of power between Anna and Julian. The benefactor's most significant move, however, was in the legal arena. Carter introduced Anna, via video conference, to a new legal team. This wasn't a small, one-woman operation like Helen's. This was a team of legal titans, the kind of lawyers who made men like Arthur Vance tremble. They were sharp, ruthless, and most importantly, they were now hers. "We've reviewed the documents Julian's lawyers sent you," said the lead attorney, a formidable woman named Evelyn Reed. "The NDA is a joke. We'll have it thrown out. The divorce proceedings will be handled on our terms, not his." But it was their strategy regarding the penthouse that truly stunned Anna. "The offer from my client stands," Carter confirmed. "They are in the final stages of a leveraged buyout of the entire portfolio of properties that includes 157. It's a complex, off-market transaction that has been in the works for some time. Your situation has simply accelerated the timeline." "Why?" Anna asked, the question that had been burning in her mind. "Why are they doing this for me? I don't even know who they are." "My client," Carter said, his voice carefully neutral, "has a deep-seated belief in justice. And they have a personal interest in seeing Julian Croft held accountable for his actions. Let's just say your husband has made some powerful enemies." The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. To be the beneficiary of such a powerful personal vendetta was a heavy burden, but it was also a shield, a weapon of unimaginable power. While Anna was being ensconced in her new life, Julian was growing increasingly agitated. His perfectly calibrated world was beginning to tilt on its axis. He had expected Anna to be broken, to be desperate. He had expected her to take the money, sign the papers, and disappear. But she hadn't. Instead, a wall of silence had gone up. The process server he had sent to her last known address, the dingy hotel, had been told she had checked out with no forwarding address. His private investigators, the best in the business, had hit a brick wall. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Then came the letter from Evelyn Reed's office. It was a masterpiece of legal aggression, a polite but firm declaration of war. It rejected his proposed settlement, informed him that Anna would be contesting the divorce on grounds of extreme cruelty, and most audaciously stated that she intended to seek full ownership of the marital home, the 157 penthouse. Julian had laughed when he read that part. It was absurd, a desperate, amateurish bluff. But Arthur Vance, his own lawyer, had not been so dismissive. Evelyn Reed is not an amateur, Julian, Vance had warned, his face pale. She's a killer. If she's representing your wife, it means someone with very deep pockets is backing her. Someone who wants to hurt you. The news of the leveraged buyout of 157's parent company sent a shockwave through the real estate world and a jolt of pure dread through Julian. It was a bold, aggressive move, executed with a speed and precision that spoke of immense financial power, and it was aimed directly at him. He was about to lose control of his own building, his own kingdom. He became obsessed, consumed with finding out who was behind it. He called in favors, leveraged his contacts, but the identity of the buyer was shrouded in a complex web of offshore corporations and impenetrable trusts. It was a ghost, a phantom entity that was systematically dismantling his world. His paranoia began to seep into his professional life. He became short-tempered with his staff, suspicious of his partners. The amicable separation narrative he had so carefully constructed was beginning to crumble. Whispers began to circulate. Why was Julian Croft, the master of the universe, suddenly so embattled? What had really happened with his wife? Marcus, his brother, watched Julian's unraveling with a mixture of satisfaction and concern. "You should have just been a decent human being, Julian," he said one evening, finding his brother staring moodily out of the penthouse window, a glass of whiskey in his hand. "You made this bed for yourself. Someone is helping her," Julian snarled, his reflection a distorted mask of fury in the darkened glass. "Someone is pulling the strings, and I'm going to find out who it is." Meanwhile, in the quiet sanctuary of her Brooklyn brownstone, Anna was undergoing a transformation. With the immediate threat of homelessness and poverty removed, she began to heal. The constant fear and anxiety that had plagued her began to recede, replaced by a growing sense of purpose. She started painting again. The benefactor, through Carter, had arranged for a state-of-the-art studio to be set up in the brownstone, complete with the finest canvases, paints, and brushes. For the first time in years, she felt the familiar, intoxicating rush of creative energy. Her art, once a source of quiet rebellion, was now becoming a declaration of strength. Her paintings were no longer the soft, abstract landscapes of her past. They were bold, raw, and full of emotion. She painted the gilded cage of the penthouse, the cold, unforgiving face of her husband, the terror of that first night alone. But she also painted the burgeoning life within her, the unexpected kindness of strangers, the nascent hope for a future she could call her own. She also began to educate herself. The legal team provided her with files, documents, and reports. She learned about Julian's business dealings, his vulnerabilities, the hidden cracks in his empire. She discovered that his success was built on a foundation of ruthless takeovers, broken promises, and ruined lives. He had left a trail of enemies in his wake, any one of whom could be her secret benefactor. The pregnancy was progressing, and with each passing week, her connection to the child grew stronger. This baby, once the source of her downfall, was now her greatest motivation. She was no longer just fighting for herself. She was fighting for her child's future, for their right to a life free from the shadow of their father. One day, Benjamin Carter arrived at the brownstone in person. It was the first time Anna had met him face to face. He was exactly as his voice had suggested, calm, impeccably dressed, and exuding an air of quiet competence. "My client felt it was time for you to have a more active role in the proceedings," he said, handing her a thick file. "This is a comprehensive portfolio of Julian Croft's assets, his liabilities, and his indiscretions." Anna opened the file. It contained a wealth of information, hidden bank accounts, shell corporations, details of secret deals that bordered on illegal. But it was a smaller, separate envelope within the file that caught her attention. "What's this?" she asked. "That," Carter said, his expression unreadable, is what my client refers to as the key. It's personal. It's a piece of your husband's past that he has gone to great lengths to conceal. My client believes it is the one thing he fears above all else. Anna's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside was a faded photograph and a yellowed newspaper clipping. The photograph was of a young, smiling woman, her eyes full of life and hope. The newspaper clipping was an obituary. The woman's name was Sophia, and she had died tragically and mysteriously over a decade ago. "Who is she?" Anna whispered, a cold dread creeping into her heart. "She was Julian Croft's first love," Carter explained, his voice soft. "And her family believes he was responsible for her death." The room fell silent, the only sound the frantic beating of Anna's own heart. The benefactor's game was far more dangerous, far more personal than she had ever imagined. This wasn't just about a divorce or a penthouse. It was about a secret that had the power to not just ruin Julian Croft, but to destroy him completely. And the benefactor had just handed her the weapon. The revelation of Sophia's existence and the dark cloud of suspicion surrounding her death shifted the very ground beneath Anna's feet. The battle was no longer just about her own liberation. It was about uncovering a truth that had been buried for over a decade. The faded photograph of the smiling young woman became a haunting presence in the quiet brownstone, a silent testament to another life Julian had allegedly destroyed. Benjamin Carter, acting on his client's instructions, provided Anna with a more detailed dossier on the Sophia case. Sophia Romano had been Julian's college sweetheart, a brilliant, passionate young woman from a wealthy, old-money family. They were the golden couple, destined for a life of shared success and happiness. But their relationship had ended abruptly, and shortly thereafter, Sophia had died in a single-car accident on a winding coastal road. The official ruling was accidental death, but the Romano family had always suspected foul play. They believed Julian had driven her to her death, either through emotional torment or, as the darkest whisper suggested, by more direct means. The Romanos, a proud and powerful family in their own right, had tried to investigate, but Julian, even then, had been adept at covering his tracks. They had no concrete proof, only a deep-seated conviction that he was responsible. They had eventually withdrawn from society, broken by their grief and their inability to find justice for their daughter. "Why are you telling me this?" Anna asked Carter, her voice trembling. "Who is your client? Is it the Romano family?" Carter's expression remained impassive. "My client's identity must remain confidential for now, but I can tell you that they were very close to Sophia. Her death was a profound loss." The pieces began to click into place. The benefactor's vendetta wasn't just about business or a general sense of justice. It was deeply, irrevocably personal. They were using Anna and her own struggle against Julian as the instrument of a long-delayed revenge. Anna felt a chill run down her spine. She was a pawn in a much larger, much deadlier game than she had realized. But she was also the one holding the most powerful piece on the board. Her legal team, led by Evelyn Reed, began to subtly shift their strategy. They weren't just attacking Julian's finances anymore. They were creating a narrative, a pattern of behavior. They started deposing former employees, ex-girlfriends, anyone who had witnessed Julian's controlling nature, his ruthlessness, his capacity for cruelty. They were painting a portrait of a man who systematically broke the women in his life. The pressure on Julian was mounting from all sides. The phantom buyer had successfully completed the acquisition of 157. He was now a tenant in his own kingdom, a fact that galled him to his core. His business deals were facing unexpected scrutiny, with regulators suddenly taking a keen interest in transactions that had previously gone unnoticed. And the whispers about his amicable divorce were growing louder, fueled by strategic leaks from Anna's legal team. He was bleeding money, influence, and most importantly, control. The world he had built with such meticulous precision was beginning to fracture. He became a man besieged, lashing out at everyone around him. His rages became legendary, his paranoia all-consuming. Marcus, his brother, was one of the few people who dared to confront him directly. "This is about more than the divorce, isn't it?" Marcus asked one night, finding Julian in his office, surrounded by financial reports and legal documents. "This feels different. It feels personal." Julian's head snapped up, his eyes bloodshot and wild. "What do you know about it?" he snarled. "I know that you're self-destructing," Marcus said, his voice unusually firm. "And I think I know why. I remember Sophia, Julian. I remember what happened. And I think someone else does too." The mention of Sophia's name was like a physical blow. Julian recoiled, his face ashen. "You will not speak that name in this office," he hissed, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "Why?" Marcus pressed, emboldened by his brother's reaction. "Because you're guilty? Because you know you destroyed her, just like you tried to destroy Anna?" In a sudden, violent outburst, Julian swept everything off his desk. Papers, a laptop, a crystal decanter, all went crashing to the floor. "Get out," he roared, his face contorted in a mask of pure fury. "Get out of my life." Marcus left, shaken but more certain than ever that the key to his brother's downfall lay in the past. While Julian was spiraling, Anna was finding her strength. The pregnancy was now visible, a gentle curve that she touched with a mixture of love and fierce protectiveness. She had chosen a name for her unborn child, a son whom she would call Leo. It meant lion, a symbol of the courage she was trying to embody. She continued to paint, her work becoming a visual diary of her journey. One of her paintings, a powerful, abstract piece that captured the feeling of falling from a great height, was anonymously submitted to a prestigious art competition by the benefactor. It won. The news, when it was announced, caused a small stir in the art world. A new, unknown artist of incredible talent had emerged. For Anna, it was a validation of the identity she had sacrificed for her marriage, a sign that she was becoming her own person again. But the real turning point came when the benefactor decided it was time to reveal their identity. Benjamin Carter arranged a meeting at a discreet, private location, a secluded wing of the Frick Collection, the renowned art museum, after hours. Anna was led through the silent, echoing halls, past masterpieces by Rembrandt and Vermeer, to a small, quiet gallery. A woman was standing with her back to Anna, gazing at a painting. She was older, in her late 60s, with an air of quiet, unshakable elegance. She was dressed in a simple but exquisitely tailored suit, her silver hair styled in a chic, classic bob. When she turned around, her eyes, a startlingly intelligent shade of blue, met Anna's. "Anna," the woman said, her voice warm but tinged with a deep, abiding sadness. "I am so glad to finally meet you in person. My name is Isabella Romano." Anna's breath caught in her throat. It was Sophia's mother. "You are my benefactor," Anna whispered the words. A statement, not a question. "I am," Isabella confirmed. "Sophia was my only child. When she died, a part of me died with her. For years, my husband and I were lost in our grief. We had the wealth, the influence to fight Julian, but we lacked the will. We gave up." She gestured to the painting she had been looking at. "But I never forgot, and I never stopped watching him. I watched him build his empire on the ashes of other people's lives. I watched him charm his way through society, a wolf in sheep's clothing. And then, I watched him marry you." Her gaze on Anna was intense, but not unkind. "I saw in you the same spark I saw in my Sophia. The same intelligence, the same passion, the same light. And I saw him trying to extinguish it, just as he had extinguished hers. When he threw you out, pregnant and alone, I knew I could not stand by any longer. It was as if he was killing my daughter all over again." Tears welled in Anna's eyes. "I'm so sorry for your loss," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Sophia's death will never be avenged in a court of law," Isabella said, her voice hardening. "Julian was too clever for that, but he can be brought down. His empire is a house of cards built on arrogance and intimidation. And you, Anna, are the one who's going to pull out the first card." "Me?" Anna asked, bewildered. "How?" "Julian's greatest vulnerability," Isabella explained, "is his ego, his belief in his own invincibility. We have systematically dismantled his financial security and his public image. Now, we must deliver the final, personal blow. We must confront him with the two things he thought he had successfully buried, his past and his own child. The plan she outlined was audacious, a piece of high-stakes theater designed to shatter Julian's psyche completely. The annual Croft Foundation Charity Gala is in 2 weeks, Isabella said. It is Julian's crowning achievement. The one night of the year he gets to play the benevolent philanthropist. It is the perfect stage for his public humiliation. The plan was simple yet devastating. Anna would make her return to society at the gala. She would not be the broken, discarded wife. She would be the picture of strength, success, and radiant motherhood. And she would be escorted by a guest who would be sure to capture the attention of every camera and every gossip columnist in the room. "Who will I be with?" Anna asked. Isabella smiled, a flicker of grim satisfaction in her eyes. "With my husband," she said. The world has not seen Alessandro Romano in public in over a decade. His presence at your side will be a declaration of war that every person in that room will understand. And there was one more piece to the plan, one final devastating twist. "We have also acquired something else of Julian's," Isabella said, her voice dropping. "A small, private biotech company he invested in years ago, one he has kept off the books. It specializes in genetic research and paternity testing." She paused, letting the implications sink in. "We have arranged for a court order demanding a paternity test for your unborn child. The results will be delivered by legal courier to Julian on the night of the gala." Anna's mind reeled. It was a masterstroke of psychological warfare to confront him with his past, his present, and his future all at once, in the most public of settings. "He will be cornered," Isabella said, her voice as cold as steel. "He will be exposed, and he will have nowhere left to run." As Anna left the museum, the weight of what she was about to do settled upon her. She was no longer just a victim seeking justice. She was an avenger, a key player in a decade-old tragedy. She thought of Sophia, the vibrant young woman in the photograph, and of Leo, the lion-hearted son growing within her. She was fighting for both of them now. The final act was about to begin, and the stage was set for a confrontation that would bring the house of Croft crashing down once and for all. The night of the Croft Foundation Charity Gala was Julian's annual coronation, a glittering spectacle held in the grand ballroom of the New York Public Library. He stood at its center, playing the part of the benevolent king. But beneath the bespoke tuxedo, he was a man on the verge of collapse. The world he had built with brutal precision was fracturing, attacked by a phantom enemy who seemed to anticipate his every move. His unraveling had accelerated that morning when a court order for a paternity test had been served, a legal dagger aimed at the heart of his deepest, most guarded secret, a rare genetic disorder that ran in his family, a condition he knew he was a carrier for. The child he had rejected wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a potential time bomb that could expose the one vulnerability he lived in mortal fear of. A sudden, collective gasp silenced the ballroom's cheerful hum. The crowd, a sea of couture and diamonds, turned as one towards the grand staircase. Julian's blood ran cold. It was Anna. She stood at the top of the stairs, not as a victim, but as a vision of breathtaking power. She was radiant in an emerald green gown that proudly displayed her pregnancy, her eyes locking with his across the room, holding not fear, but a cold, unwavering resolve. The man at her side, however, was the true masterstroke. It was Alessandro Romano, Sophia's father, a ghost from Julian's past resurrected to witness his downfall. His presence with Anna was a public declaration of war, and every person in that room understood its devastating implication. As they descended, the elite crowd parted for them, camera flashes erupting like gunfire. This was the image that would seal Julian's fate, the exiled, pregnant wife returning on the arm of her husband's oldest and most bitter enemy. Anna approached him, her expression serene, while Alessandro stood back, a silent, powerful sentinel. "Julian," she said, her voice clear and carrying, "you're looking unwell." "What is this?" he hissed, his voice a desperate, strangled whisper. Mr. Romano and his wife have shown me the kindness I never received from my husband, she replied, loud enough for the nearest guest to hear, their ears straining for every word. At that moment, a legal courier appeared, cutting through the stunned onlookers. He held out a sealed envelope. Mr. Croft, he announced, the results of the court-ordered paternity test. The room held its breath. Julian stared at the envelope, a death warrant for the secrets he'd killed to protect. He knew it would confirm the child was his, giving Anna's lawyers the power to subpoena his medical records and expose everything. Go on, Julian, Anna urged softly. Open it. The world is waiting. He couldn't move. He was trapped in the Klieg lights of his own making, a king cornered in his crumbling castle. Then Anna delivered the final, fatal blow, leaning in so only he could hear. It doesn't matter what that paper says. The world will soon know the truth about everything. About Sophia. About how you really built this empire. She smiled, a chillingly beautiful gesture. By the way, Isabella Romano bought this library. She's donating it to the city in her daughter's name. Your foundation, your legacy, it will all be erased. That was the blow that shattered him. The intricate facade of Julian Croft, titan and philanthropist, disintegrated. He looked at Anna, the woman he had discarded, and saw the architect of his ruin. With a strangled cry of utter despair, he turned and fled, pushing through the shocked crowd, running from the cameras, from his past, and from the inescapable truth of his own monstrosity. The aftermath was swift and brutal. The story of his public meltdown exploded, and his empire, built on a foundation of intimidation, crumbled to dust. His stock plummeted, partners vanished, and Julian Croft, the man who had everything, simply disappeared. Years passed, washing away the scars of the past like the tide on a shore. The penthouse at 157, once a symbol of imprisonment, was now a true home, filled not with cold marble and silence, but with the warm echoes of a child's laughter and the vibrant colors of drying paint. Anna, now a celebrated artist in her own right, had reclaimed her identity and her passion. Her work, imbued with the raw power of her journey, hung in galleries around the world. She gave birth to a healthy, beautiful son, Leo, who, in a final, gentle act of cosmic irony, had not inherited the dreaded genetic disorder. He was the sun in her universe, a bright, curious boy who knew nothing of the darkness that preceded his birth, only the boundless love of his mother. Isabella and Alessandro Romano became his adoring surrogate grandparents. Having found a measure of peace, they channeled their resources into philanthropy, establishing the Sophia Romano Foundation for the Arts, which now sponsored the very library where Julian's world had ended. They had transformed their grief into a legacy of hope and creation. Even Marcus, freed from the suffocating influence of his brother, had found his own path, running a small, ethical investment firm and becoming a cherished Uncle Marcus to Leo. As for Julian, he was a ghost, a cautionary tale whispered among the city's elite. Stripped of his wealth, his power, and his name, he lived in self-imposed exile, haunted by the specter of the two women he had tried to destroy. For a man whose entire existence was built on image and control, this quiet, complete erasure was a fate far worse than any prison. One sunlit afternoon, standing in her living room holding her son's small hand, Anna looked out at the city. She had been cast down from this tower only to end up owning it. Her true power, she knew, wasn't in the building or the money, but in the unyielding strength she had found within herself. Aided by a mother's grief, she had faced a monster and won. She was free, and the future, like the limitless view before her, was hers to paint. So, what do you think of Anna's incredible story? A journey from a shattered life on the cold pavement to owning the very tower she was cast out from. It's a powerful reminder that true strength isn't about the money you have, but the resilience you find in your darkest moments. And sometimes, justice comes from the most unexpected places. If you were moved by Anna's fight for her future and the incredible twist of her secret benefactor, show some love and hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs a story of hope and empowerment. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more unforgettable stories like this one. Let us know in the comments what you think Julian's ultimate fate should be. We read every single one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.